Welcome everyone who's online today for our October Y&How Sustainability Workshop. And today's topic is how to turn travel into a force of good. What are the climate-friendly trends? And we have Dr. Brooke Hansen from the University of South Florida with us, which is a real special treat. I love it when we get academics who have both deep insight and can connect their research to practice and things that people do every day. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Growing Climate Solutions, I think most of you are. We are a regional initiative aimed at developing a network of institutions and stakeholders that will work together primarily to build climate awareness, but we also focus on those natural assets because they are part of our resilience. We want to empower everyone who participates to support and engage on climate solutions with a focus and a perspective on equity and how these things can be done in our society equitably. We want to increase the visibility of local solutions because that encourages more people to join on. And ultimately, that is the way forward to a prosperous and healthy community. The Y&How workshops came about a couple of years ago because we were having some very interesting speakers speaking on national and global trends. But at the end, people would walk away and say, wow, things are really complicated. What do I do with that? And we felt that it was important to give people actionable ways in which they can engage in solutions. So the Y&How workshops were created on the idea that we'll focus on a specific topic that has to do with your day-to-day life, hopefully something local. And at the end of the workshop, you should be able to walk away with like 2 or 3 things you might do differently starting tomorrow. And making climate a solution, some part of everybody's daily life. Before we begin, just so everyone knows, we're in a Zoom meeting format, not webinar. So we ask you to stay muted until we get to the Q&A, which we'll do right after Dr. Hansen's presentation. And turn off your camera if you're going to have distractions. Remember, we can hear your dog barking otherwise and the doorbell ringing. But once we do move to the Q&A, we want to encourage this dialogue. This isn't a formal presentation, it's a workshop. So ask questions, I'll moderate some of those questions and get engaged. I am really excited to present our speaker today, Dr. Brooke Hansen. Dr. Hansen is a sustainably focused anthropologist, the first anthropologist we've had at the University of South Florida, where she researches and teaches on topics of sustainable tourism, ecotourism, climate impacts of tourism, as well as on issues of food sovereignty and regenerative agriculture. Dr. Brooks holds a faculty appointment in the Patel College of Sustainability, the Department of Women's and Gender Studies, and at the Muma College of Business School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. She also serves as director of the Sustainable Development Goals Action Alliance, which is a United Nations partnership, and even more locally here in Florida. She is a member of the USGBC Tampa Bay Leadership Committee, the Tampa Bay Women's Tourism Group, and the Florida Agro-Tourism Association. So she's well embedded in our community. And with that, I will turn off my screen sharing and turn it over to Brooke. Take it away.
Great. Let me get to the screen share here. I've got some slides to show everyone, and I think some great ideas to share for your upcoming travels. Let's just start from the beginning here. There we go. Can you see okay, Anna? Everything good?
Everything looks good on our end.
Excellent. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am an academic, but I am deeply embedded in practice and trying to use tourism as a force for good around the world. So let me share some overall ideas with you about what sustainable tourism really is. And then we're going to get into some problems that tourism is involved with, exacerbating climate change with its huge footprint. And then we'll talk about solutions and things that you can all do. But we have to kind of start at the beginning here, which is the paradigm that I do most of my work within, and that's sustainable tourism. I teach multiple courses on it at USF for undergraduates and for graduates. And this is always first day stuff here. What the heck is sustainable tourism? Sustainability can be a very tricky word. A lot of people don't understand what we're talking about. So I like to boil it down. This is the official definition from the UN World Tourism Organization. So you can see that we're talking about economy, social, and environmental impacts, and addressing the needs of the stakeholders, and that's visitors, the industry, residents, and more. But that's a big mouthful, so I can't really get that out when I'm on the street and people are asking, what's sustainable tourism, Brooke? What do you study? I like to boil it down to the triple bottom line. And I say, well, sustainable tourism is tourism that supports people, planet, and prosperity, the triple bottom line, because that's a lot easier to explain. And the people side is really significant. We're concerned about the cultures that people visit. We're concerned about workers in the tourism and hospitality industries. So the people part is a really important aspect of sustainability. Are we respecting cultures? Are we paying workers what they deserve to be paid? And of course, we're looking at the planet aspect, the environmental aspects. What about waste? What about water conservation? What is the impact of that tourism business on the environment? And without prosperity, tourism doesn't exist and continue to go on. So we need to have that prosperity or profit element. A lot of the work that I do is also aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is a global framework. Most of the rest of the world is already on this page of the Sustainable Development Goals, and they're being used heavily for tourism planning and development across countries on every continent. In case you haven't seen our SDGs, there are 17 of them. They're all interconnected goals. And the idea here is that if we tackle some of these primary ones, like no poverty and zero hunger and decent work and economic growth, it spills over into all of the other ones: education, good health, clean water, taking care of our environments above water and below water. So even though there's 17 separate boxes here, they're really all interconnected with many strings and webs tying them together. And as I said, around the rest of the world, whole governments have aligned with these, ministries of tourism have aligned. We don't quite have the literacy in the SDGs here in the US, but I'm trying to change that because it's a great framework. It's a common language. We can talk about our sustainable goals. We hope to meet these goals by 2030. Don't think we're going to make it, but we like to strive for excellence. And you can see number 13 is climate action. So that one's very involved with tourism. In fact, tourism has glommed on to the SDGs, and we have our own platform. It's called Tourism for SDGs. There's a website, there are programs and resources, and we feel that tourism intersects with all 17 Sustainable Development Goals for sure. I recently did an NPR piece on the effects of climate change on tourism. So I have the link here, and that can be shared out with you if you want to listen to that podcast or read the article as well. Just to do a little foreshadowing here, there are many impacts of climate change on tourism. And you see my background here is the Arizona desert. So here's one example. I went to a conference in July in Arizona. Yeah, that's not so smart, is it? Because it's going to be hot anyway. But they had record-breaking temperatures this summer in Arizona. So while I was hiking through that beautiful desert at around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, it was around 113 degrees. And I was thinking, okay, note to self, don't ever go back to Arizona in the summertime. And people are starting to change their destinations. I heard rumblings of that this summer here in Florida, as people noted that we had one of the hottest and driest summers on record. Sometimes people like to sneak down to Florida during the summer for a vacay, But I think if we're going to have super hot summers like this summer, people are going to go other places, maybe Iceland. I also talked in this podcast about another phenomenon in travel, partly spurred by climate change, and that's last chance tourism, or LCT as we call it. It's a huge area of study. And what it means is that people are racing all over the world to see the last polar bear, the last glacier, the last fill in the blank. And many of these lasts are caused by climate change, not all of them, but glaciers and polar bears for sure connected with climate change. So we're studying the motivations of people going to these places and what else is going to be the last of as we go forward with even more severe effects of climate change.
Brooke?
Let's talk about some other issues here.
Brooke,
Tourism.
I need to interrupt you for a second.
Okay.
And I want to apologize profusely about this. We've never done this. We got a weird message from Zoom that they might disconnect our call in 4 minutes because our link isn't in the right account. We've been struggling with this. If that were to happen, we're trying to fix it. I have put a link into my original email account for everybody on the call. If they could go on to chat and copy this Zoom link, perhaps we can use this meeting link should this call get disconnected. We're working on the back end to prevent that from happening, but the Conservancy switched our account credentials. That's what we've been struggling with, and maybe it didn't go as planned. So if we were to fall apart in 3.46 seconds, could everybody on the call go into the chat and copy that Zoom link? That's my account, and we can reconnect the call if that were to happen.
Right. Yeah, I see that.
Okay.
I don't see a link in the chat. Have you put it in there yet?
I already put it. Oh, here it is. It's in the chat now.
Okay, there we go. Let me just copy that so it's
everybody
there.
copy that. This is unusual for us.
Okay.
But we've been struggling with this linking with the account at the Conservancy, and though they turned it back on for us, they may not have put us into the right pro account when they relinked us. So if we were to disconnect, I hope everybody can just copy that, go to your browser and reconnect on my account, and hopefully we can continue the conversation. We'll take it as an intermission.
Okay, we're ready to do that, and I'll keep an eye on that timer.
Okay.
There might be a grace period, so we might be able to keep on going. So we'll see what happens in 3 minutes, and I'll keep on chatting away here. But
Yeah,
I've got the
sorry
link
about
copied,
that.
so I'm ready to go. Okay. I just want to kind of give some background on tourism and why we think this is such a great focal point for sustainability and talking about climate change. A lot of people say it's one of the biggest industries in the world. If you really account for everyone involved with tourism, it really is the biggest industry in the world. It's certainly the largest movement of people in the world since the beginning of human cultures. And that means it has a huge carbon footprint. It's estimated that tourism accounts for about 10% of the world's carbon and greenhouse gas footprint. Could be a little higher than that. Transportation is the culprit. Cruises, airplanes, but also built environments like hotels have large footprints as well. We also have to think about how only about 2 to 3% of the world gets to travel. So the 2 to 3% creating all of these emissions is affecting the other 97% of the world. Just something to ponder. And we have to insert plastics in this too, because plastics are fossil fuel based. They're used heavily in tourism. And the more we do that, the more we produce all these plastics and then burn them in incinerators, the more we're making the climate crisis worse. Plus, we're polluting environments that tourism depends on by having all these plastics. So it's really part of our conversation with climate change effects and tourism. And here are just some stats on the enormous impact of plastics on emissions around the world having a climate effect. So lots of bad stuff going on there. And we don't recycle, really. Our recycling rates are very low around the world. So a lot of our plastic ends up in waste to energy plants and it gets burned, which causes more emissions. So we got to get rid of plastic. out of tourism. Luckily, we have a lot of initiatives now to do that. And here's something from UNESCO, a sustainable travel pledge, 10 easy ways to reduce your plastic in your hotel. So you can check out the UNESCO site for that one. And of course, we have many initiatives to get rid of straws. That's low-hanging fruit. We have ordinances in St. Pete that ban plastic straws, and we need to do that around the world. It's easy just to not use a straw or bring your own. We also